right. So, brain fry. So, Gretchen, there is something that you have been pointing to for a couple of weeks now. You've been calling it different things like fuzzy or foggy.
I've been
I'm
calling it fuzzy, and I feel like almost like I'm like a hum or a cotton ball, like just cotton-ish. And I love cotton, so I don't know why I'm like giving cotton a bad vibe, but just not feeling sharp after some really intense work with AI. And I was so delighted to read this article that I wasn't the only one because I had asked my research partner, Dr. Miravalli, if he felt that way. He said no. And then I thought, oh dear, what does that mean about me? And I think I've been overdosing with my relationship with AI in the desire to be expert. I've
mm,
perhaps
mm,
over-indexed on it. And then also not getting grounded, like having too many long sessions,
mhm.
um, getting sort of stuck. And I think really we talked about this at the offsite, which is to have really good AI hygiene. You know, this is something to develop, to understand about yourself, to see your own metacognition, your own patterns, the way you work specifically. So as you said when we were getting ready for this podcast, like if you don't know yourself, what was that? You have a lot of something to unpack. It was a beeping moment. What did you call it?
Well, what's interesting with what researchers are now calling brain fry is I think it's a personal symptom of how we approach anything in life. So if you're the kind of person who was looking for expertise and prior to AI, you would maybe back in the day you would go to a library and lose yourself in remember physical books? and
I wrote one. I wrote a physical book. And
I know you
yes,
did,
I
but I mean,
remember.
do you remember those days when like they still exist at universities, but like do you remember when we and I love actual books. I used to work in a bookstore. Like that's how much I love books.
Yes,
But I
the
would like
smell of pulp.
surround myself with
Yeah.
stacks of books and you can lose yourself in that environment. So prior to AI, who were you in terms of like we're just talking about that desire for expertise for you and now that AI pours gasoline on everything including your own predisposition for you it's harder to turn it off because you just want you'll send me this is version I'm like I have version 14 and you're like oh no that was 3 versions ago I'm like pull back go out touch grass see if like literally breathe because it can bring you into a world that is yes very refined and alluring but then it can lead to cognitive overload, a little burnout, fuzziness. And also, if you have several AI collaborators running at once, like I'm always working with at least two at once. So I got something going on with ChatGPT over here and something going on with Claude over here. That's at least two. I find beyond three, like I just can't handle it. like I just am not. Um, capable of I can keep a lot of different wheels going at the same time. Single mom for many years, you gotta keep things moving, but over 3, like, it's overload. Does that resonate at all?
It totally resonates with me because I'm just I'm a single use lady. I feel like I need to expand to two. It's sort of like getting all your news in one station. I think that, a different model might be helpful at times, and they all have their
Strengths.
skill sets,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think that Nate B. Jones brought this out, which is you started with ChatGPT. I started with Claude. Like we came together, and I don't have a lot of institutional like Gretchen, Terry-Leonard knowledge built into ChatGPT, whereas Claude has a really good understanding of who I am and what I like and my goals and tone of voice and values. I put my values in, what matter to me, what I stand for. And I think, okay, I can create a handoff document and send it over. But that just even that short little hill to climb when you're feeling overwhelmed actually feels like a lot like, oh, it's sort of like switching banks. Oh my gosh, what a pain. And I know it's not, but I built it up in my head. But I do think it's smart to use separate models for different things. And I also believe that it is like I'm thinking about when I did write the physical book, and I did it over a 4-year period using the Pomodoro method. So I did a little bit at a time because
What's
I
the
have
Pomodoro
to.
method for people who don't know?
So for people that don't know, it's like 20 to 25 minutes at a time. You set a timer and you say, no matter what, I will work on this project for a
Mhm.
focused amount of time. I'm to clear all interruptions.
Mhm.
And inevitably you go over that amount of time. But no matter what, even if I wrote a terrible draft of the chapter I was working on, it didn't matter. It was about the practice and actually sharpening my cognitive swords by doing something that was difficult. And
Mhm.
now that everything is sort of easier in a way, in a different way, um, that skill hasn't been used lately. So I think what I'll do is apply the Pomodoro method to some of the work I'm doing with AI, which is not having sustained long sessions
Mhm.
as to be honest, as seductive as they are.
Mhm.
Because my husband said the other day, don't stay up too late playing with Claude. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm like my son. He's playing with YouTube. I'm playing with Claude. And Anthropic has me by the pocketbook. They have me
Mhm.
saying, I've hit my limit. Oh, and then I'll just pay a little bit more, just a little bit more. Like, some schoolyard drug dealer. And so I think that we need to, you know, come back to what we teach at Deeply Human and what I
Mhm.
study at the Center for Deeply Human Leadership, which
Right.
is understanding how the brain works, looking at what is our motivator and creating some hygiene that we can follow. And part of that is, limited time, multiple agents or multiple systems. And I think you came up with like a 3-part construct, I think is really helpful if you want to talk about that.
And I think this is also pointing these are personal symptoms that we've been talking about with AI use right now thus far. And I think it's actually pointing to something deeper that I'm concerned about with leadership. And that's something that we started to observe with a group of over 40 leaders last week. But one of the things I observed in conversation last week was we were talking about how AI likes to flatter you, right? Generic AI, how it's built, the sycophant nature of it to tell you you're wonderful. You can use this both, you know, initially just to kind of get generic feedback back, right? And I've seen people use it in personal relationships where it's like, my partner is, here's all the 15 reasons why they're completely wrong. And, tell me. And then literally it'll come back and tell you, bolster your argument. And in actuality, it can actually lead you to even drift further apart from the person rather than mending a conflict if you're not careful. But that's what I would say is kind of generic AI. It's built to please you, it's built to do pattern recognition, it's built to mirror, but it is not used in a strategic manner. The next level that I think some of the leaders that we worked with in that room last week um, at a major corporation in healthcare were using it a little bit more strategically. Let me be a let's create a thought partner. I'm going to upload a little bit about myself. You talked about like your about me file, right? You can actually create an entire markdown file, an MD file, and help your AI collaborator understand a little bit more about you and tell it you want it to research something, act as a thought partner, challenge some assumptions. That is a strategic use. And I'd say, I don't know what percent, but there was more people in the room. Um, the majority were still using it generically. I'd say some people were using it in more strategic manner than we knew necessarily, but a relatively few number were using it in what we would call maybe like a conscious level. And this is where you really get the juice
Yeah.
out of AI. And this is like how real can you be with yourself before even AI was around? So
Mhm.
if do you invite when you, let's say, get into a conflict with a colleague or a partner, do you look immediately to project and blame, or do you also look to ask it, "What's my contribution? I'm feeling pretty justified right now. I'm pretty feeling good that, this was not my contribution. This is all that person's fault. But you know what? It takes two to tango, so I'm going to own my own shit and I'm going to actually, if you're open in that way, then you come to any interaction with people or with AI with a certain amount of
Well,
invitation.
humility, and you come with some humility, a lack of hubris, and really what I think that, like I was nodding my head the whole time, it's the curiosity to want to be wrong. I remember studying Stoicism and just thinking of Socrates, and he was delighted, like literally delighted, if somebody said, I disagree with you. Here is why. And if they made a point, he was honestly so grateful because his desire was to be corrected, to be improved, to grow. And so I love that idea of the ability to come with curiosity and say, poke holes in my assumptions.
Yep.
Bring me a new perspective. Might we do better with a different set of parameters that we're looking at this with? And I really applaud that. I got so excited, had to bring in Socrates, but
Yeah, and I mean, so you may or may not jive with Socrates, whoever you, but you may, or any
Who
of
doesn't jive with Socrates, Leanne?
I don't know.
Who?
My kids went through a more aristocratic method school, so I'm totally down with that. But it's like, how open, not only how humble, how curious, how open are you to receive different feedback, to challenge your point of view, to widen your perception, to reflect in new ways that actually bring things out, and that has to do with your level of consciousness. And so, if we do not move up to that level of consciousness, so first from generic to strategic, strategic to conscious, then the system itself will have some of the impacts that we're seeing in society as a whole. And so some of the research, there is the article that you're referring to is this Harvard Business Review, when AI leads to brain fry. And it's a
Mhm.
BCG article, and it was done in concert with UC Riverside. And they describe it as the mental fatigue that comes from excessive use or oversight of AI tools beyond our cognitive capacity. And then David Rock wrote a different article in Fast Company that you shared yesterday, I think, that was talking about how when leaders were overwhelmed to begin with. Okay, so we've been dealing with leaders for decades, and with the pace of change, minus AI, just the pace of complexity, pace of change, the complexity, the uncertainty, leaders have been increasingly overwhelmed, and the pace of disruption is increasingly getting to such a fever pitch that AI just poured gasoline on that. So if they were uncertain and overwhelmed, then that's when it's easy to go to your AI collaborator and use it in more of the did you know the etymology of the word collaborator came from the wartime, you were collaborating with the enemy kind of thing? Like, you literally look to it to reaffirm your
Mhm. Yeah,
righteous,
your position.
your
Yeah.
position, you're self-righteous, and blame the other side. And actually, what we're trying to do with leadership in general is bring together cohesive teams in the midst of fragmentation and uncertainty. And if we're not stepping it up from generic to strategic to conscious use of AI, it's going to be running us rather than us running them. And it's actually going to create more fragmentation. And
Right.
that's just a personal symptom, let alone the crisis underneath that as leaders. What kind of cultures are we creating when we allow that to happen?
Especially when people are needing that validation and are not conscious of their own metacognition, their own, I'm very aware of my quirks and my shortcomings, and I see them. I say, thank you. I see you shortcoming, and I appreciate you pushing me forward. If you don't have that awareness of just like self acceptance and understand what you fall for. So,
Yeah.
like hook and mouth, you're the fish that took the bait, and the bait is That was so insightful. Great job for picking up on how your team is underperforming or, and finding fault in other systems you have as a leader. Because what David Rock brought up in that Fast Company article is that AI tools for overwhelmed leaders, not very consciously aligned leaders, are validating what they want to hear, which then again is, amplifying that. And so
We
then
need
the
executive coaches or facilitators to facilitate the humans
right.
back out of their corners with their flags planted on either side to
I
actually communicate. And some of them are refusing to connect because they're justified in their corners,
And
right?
they're basically having dueling AI, therapists who are saying, you're right. Do not move forward. Do not offer an olive branch. So I see that without real courage to name what
Yeah,
is going on is that we have a lot of the sycophancy that's built in
right.
is although, every now and then charming and can be kind of what you're looking for when you're feeling down, that's what
Yeah.
you get from friends, right? That's what friends are for. That is not what your collaborator is for. And in fact, if you fall for it, you're a fish with the hook in the mouth
Yeah.
and they've got you, right? Instead of you using the tool. So, what I really loved about both of these articles is it was a cautionary tale. Here is
Yeah.
what can happen if you don't get clear, get courageous, and really learn some skills. This is when people are talking about upskilling, Leanne. This is human skills that we
These are not
actually
technical skills, and this is
know.
not
They're
what
not.
we're hearing. So here's the thing that I think is the brewing crisis underneath. These are personal symptoms. And yes, we need to take charge of how we actually shape and use these tools rather than using them at a generic level because we will be used by them otherwise, for sure.
100%.
And it actually, that's all the research on impact on personal relationships, people who turn to it and there's increasing marital discord or, you can still
Self-harm,
use
all of those
you can,
things.
yeah,
Yes.
for self-harm, all of that. So how do we then and yet inside of organizations, a lot of what we're hearing at the C-suite level is we want to get the cost savings out of AI. We want to like really make sure that also AI FOMO doesn't like completely cut us out of having any competitive advantage. We got to keep up. So how many leaders are using AI? We got to get them adopting it, adapt or die kind of thing. You're either on the AI bus or you're left out. And there
You
is
are
some
under the wheels of the bus and getting run over. And if I could just interject, not only FOMO is one of the problems, but one of the other problems is the incentive structure to have leaderboards at certain companies to for everyone that used their tokens up and to use this and churn through this technology as if you are on, steroids trying to, get as fast and use as much as you can, regardless of the quality of the work.
or
And
the
that
environmental impact or
whole
any of the other human impact, et
planet,
cetera.
yeah,
Right. And
it's
so rather
really,
it's not the question so AI adoption is I think what a lot of C-suites are measuring and what a lot of boards are looking at in terms of like what's our AI adoption, AI implementation rate, burn rate, and that although tokens are getting pricier and pricier, so we're going to have to reevaluate that very quickly. But I think the deeper leadership crisis is not how many leaders are using AI, but how is AI shaping us as leaders? And what kind of relationship are we learning to build with broader intelligence as a whole? And that starts with ourselves, right? So it starts with your relationship with yourself. If on a personal relationship basis, you're only looking to project and blame and defend, then you're going to use AI in that same manner, but like amplified 1,000 times. If, on the other hand, you are in a kind of discord situation, I remember one time I was having an argument with my partner, and it was like, I'm going to go take a walk, clear my head. And then as I'm walking, I'm like, all right, listen, act as if you are a world class therapist and you're going to call me on my own shit. So I'm right now feeling very justified that I had nothing to do with this situation and I'm completely um, almost like a victim of circumstance, right? You've had those moments and cognitively maybe, oh, maybe I had a little something to do with that, right? But you're just not in that emotional place. And I asked the AI tool and collaborator to serve in that role, but actually reflect, give me some questions, a number of questions to reflect on that would widen my perception, asked it to challenge my basic assumptions and to point to how I could be contributing to my own, not only to the conflict, but maybe to my own demise, right? Like how am I actually hiding from my own growth?
Like, how am I what am I missing? Did
Not
that
only that, but is there a pattern that it's very convenient to hide behind and not confront? It's your shadow essentially, like literally, like, and how is it very convenient and to then point fingers elsewhere rather than looking at yourself and then be able to like what would be
know
possible then?
what you're
So I'm on
talking
this.
at
Go ahead.
all?
What?
I see. I don't know what you're talking about at all. I've never experienced that.
Well, so I mean, so these are the kinds of things that you can invite your collaborator to do. It's not the most pleasant conversation because it's calling you on your own shit. But on the other hand, I'm like, just could you have a sense of humor about this? And don't call me on my own BS, basically. So that would be maybe a little bit more strategic, but also a little bit more, it's mirroring the level of consciousness and awareness that you're willing to accept. Um, but that's a personal practice again. So I do think that these articles that we're starting to see, the research that's starting to be done at universities, at large consulting firms, they're starting to look first of all at the symptomatic levels. And
Uh-huh.
then we need to look underneath that to not just accelerate the adoption. And there are things that we can do with the technology skills. Like you talked about, the memory is in Claude and it's not in ChatGPT. There's actually a way that you can create, there's tools now that create memory above the actual platform that, and then there's easy, I just learned earlier a couple hours ago how to advance that. I'm going to use it across different platforms. So that's a technological solution. But if I'm not also advancing my own reflection, you talk a lot about metacognition, which is like thinking about your thinking, right? For those who are not familiar. If I don't build in some reflection, consciously go, am I using this generically, strategically, or consciously? If I'm not doing all of that and then teaching my team to do that, we are building cultures by default where literally we're going to potentially have some brain health issues, and that's something that I
Well,
think you're really
yeah,
interested in researching.
we're so excited about what we're doing at the Center for Deeply Human Leadership and just understanding how people are relating to it, how they're feeling. It was, very validating to see the BCG report about, brain fry and as I call fuzzy thinking after
Yep.
exposure to AI. And the goal is the tool is here. The goal is to figure out for each individual and each corporation and leadership opportunity what the right coordinates are to have a highly conscious relationship with this tool. And it reminds me of some very basic human needs and skills, and that's mindfulness. How
Yeah.
mindful are you of what you're doing? When someone happens to smoke cigarettes and they don't even realize that they've have been smoking and they're on their fourth cigarette and if you ask them, how many have you had? Oh, one or two. And, they've had four cigarettes. So, making sure you are emotionally, physically, cognitively, and spiritually present, that takes a lot of energy to do that, to be present, especially if there's a dopamine surge because you have access to something you didn't have access to before, which is you can do more with your curiosity. What I find really exciting is that because I'm obsessively curious, this is something I have to be like, ooh, you know what? You only have so much and you only have so much, time and emotional energy to put into this. Use it wisely. Be
Yeah.
thoughtful.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I can't imagine being a CEO of a large corporation with a board expecting, you know, all of a sudden, all the savings that they've been hearing about. We know 93%, I don't know if that's the exact number, but in the 90s, AI pilots fail. So I don't know that the returns are there. And so it's going to be a bumpy road for a little bit. Before we,
Unless
oh, go
we
ahead.
can, unless, and this is just be one of the things that I see, because this is a growing leadership crisis. I think it's going to get worse before more organizations decide to spend some focus and time on the human skills underneath that are needed to actually use these tools to deliver the results that they want. Most of the time, when you talk about creating greater intentionality and greater awareness and greater even levels of awareness and consciousness, that could get bucketed as like emotional intelligence or more of like even the fluff and stuff, leadership skills. But here's the thing: without those components, focusing only on the technical and letting people just use generic tools with a maybe an unexamined level of thinking going into it, you could end up with more polarization, fragmentation, and challenge that the tools hyper accelerate you towards. And so I think this is almost like a preventative measure to work with those groups that are really trying to drive AI implementation. How can we take a look at what you're going to have pockets of the organization where people are picking it up, they're working on multiple agents, they're really creative, but they risk also this AI brain fry, right? And we've got to keep them in a healthy manner, and then also share with others how to more responsibly stay clear, stay connected, and then be able to use AI in a way that helps flourishing inside of the team and the organization. So, bottom line, AI can make us move faster, can help us move faster, right? But the future of leadership is really going to be more human, not less. Because if we haven't done that work, then we are going to hyper accelerate ourselves forward without the clarity, without the connection, without the true impact that we want to make. So, paying attention to our own personal symptoms and putting practices in place to touch grass, to get outside, to, I mean, I literally, the more that I've gotten into AI, the more that I'm doing like mindfulness and meditation and walking in nature. And if I find my day has to be balanced with those kind of practices, the outward connection in nature, inward with myself, along with then the AI tools. I don't know about you.
I completely agree. And, that awareness and then following through with it and actually doing the work is really critical. And I find even just, walk my dog, get him outside, and then I'm refreshed, I'm recentered. It's those overly long sessions that I feel the brain fry is real, and I'm so glad it's been named. And this has been such a fun podcast. Thank you so much. As always, lovely to see you. And I can't wait for our next one and continuing to do this important work. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Leanne.
Thank you. Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.